stream on my phone so I can see the chat. Hello everyone. Wait, did I go live? I don't know if I went live. It's not showing up on my phone yet. Still not showing up on my phone, even though it says end stream, which indicates that I am streaming. Come on, phone. There I am. Hello everyone. How are you guys doing today? I'm doing very good, thanks for asking. Get to react to this, and then straight after, episode 1, of the Fazbear's Frights timeline is coming out. I've spent so long on that, and episode 2, and more episodes just planning for it. I'm really hyped about it. I'm usually not really hyped about a lot of my videos. I still think it could be better, but you know, I think it's pretty good. I think I'm happy with it, which is why it's releasing today. Straight after this, by the way, so if you just keep watching this, I'll end the stream and then we'll go straight to that video. So we have about an hour till the premiere, so let's quickly watch this half-an-hour video and see what the difference is between my timeline, which is this on screen, and MatPat's timeline is. I'll try not to pause as much, but remember, this is a reaction. It isn't just me sitting here not reacting. So yeah, that's my timeline. Let's see what his is. Let's go.
Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory, and officially page 7 of the FNAF timeline script. Last time we covered the origins of Freddys. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing bear come to life, and the infuriating moment that his dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William meeting Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning.
If I'm looking down at my phone, I'm reading chat.
Their name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving. The world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life, yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death. Something that Afton will become intimately familiar with. But before Afton acquaints himself with death, I want you to take some time to acquaint yourself with our newest channel. Guys, this is a huge moment for us theorists. For the last decade, we've had this 4-player controller icon, and now we finally fill in the final
category,
missing piece. Get ready for the rollout of our newest theorist channel.
A little bit of a random category. I'm very interested to see how we would come up with weekly ideas. I can't think of many for fashion, but we'll see. I will skip this actually.
Myself on the ins and outs of those rules and being fashion is weird. Like, or how many actually you can find on this beast of an upload of a killer. Because if we manage Show They Theory Marathon, it'll put us as a top fashion channel here on YouTube. Show the World Theory Marathon. And now with our logo complete, it's time to complete our other massive ongoing project, this timeline. Onward to part 2, where things are about to get dark in a hurry.
Here we go.
1983. Business was booming with 2 whole restaurant franchises running. Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Springlock suit. And fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these two men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited. Restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a Foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements, and they'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp, but it was...
Okay, so that's the part of the finish of section 1, so now I quickly want to talk about it. I think there was a springlock suit in Circus Baby's Pizza World, if I'm remembering correctly. Unless that is just like a spare suit, let's say, like a spare spring bunny or something. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Also, I love the way he's doing this as just like a story, more narrative based. I definitely prefer over, which is why I did it first like this, instead of doing my first timeline as just an evidence one, because I just prefer these videos when they're just stories, you know, like I really prefer them than just the, you know, this happened because of XYZ, and then after that this happened for ABC and stuff like that. So I really like the way he's doing it. I love that he's chosen this direction. And also here, calling this a springlock failure, I was talking to someone the other day about this. I do think this is a springlock failure. I don't think it's actually legitimately, like, technically legitimately a springlock failure, but springlock failure is the excuse that Afton uses to close it all down. Much like with another child of his, Elizabeth, gas leaks shuts it all down, even though we all know that Circus Baby just killed her. So, yeah. Let's continue.
Locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements, and they'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp, but it was just a prank. It was meant to be funny. The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together. This would not be the end. No matter what, Williams' son...
I'm assuming he's not going to talk about FNAF World, which makes sense, because I don't know if it's still canon to this day. I only included it in my other thing because I just wanted to have my answer to the box, so that's why I included it all. But yeah, it could just be William, honestly. This still works.
Son would live again. It would just take time. Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's springlock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son Michael was far worse. Complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words, "It's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks.
Okay, this is gonna move on. But, yes, the security puppet, that reminded me, he hasn't mentioned Charlie dying yet. So he's saying the order of deaths does not start with Charlie. And this is also another thing I was talking about the other day with someone, was that I just don't see why it's not Charlie. Why people think it's not Charlie who dies first. I hope he talks about it later in his clearing up section, but the line that Henry says about it was the wound first inflicted on him, which would be, you know, his daughter dying, and then bled out to cause FNAF, the whole FNAF story. That's what I've taken that line as, and always have. And, you know, it feels right to put Charlie first. Because we know she dies at Fredbear's, which is the first location. We know she's the first not to die in a batch. Well, Crying Child, that doesn't matter. But also, she then, you know, helps everyone else move on and do all this. And if he said that FNAF World was canon, blah, 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 the box was FNAF World, blah, 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 then the puppet would have to die earlier to put him back together. But that's just what I think. That's my opinion, is that Charlie dies first, and then Elizabeth bite victim. So that's my opinion. No hate. That's my opinion. So, yeah.
Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there.
Junior's
the bar
just a
gave him a
bar,
place
I
to
agree.
think, to remember, to reflect and stew
Not
on
another
how Henry
important
had
location.
stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they'd cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. The robotic part was the part that failed, after all. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window.
Okay, I'm
Fine,
curious
some
why
other
he says
problem
this
to
is
fix. But then Afton got
earlier
an idea. A
that
beautifully
night.
awful idea. This
Even though
was
it's
his
later.
chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. It felt good. He felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of pure unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
MatPat really trying
In
with
that moment, William
the
became a
voice
killer.
lines.
He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled, but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death
Okay.
would
So Charlie's death. Okay. I'm trying to think. If Midnight Motorist is of the bite victim's death, does that mean that Charlie's has to be before or after it? Sorry. I'm pretty sure it still works if Charlie dies before Crying Child, and then that's later the night of his death. Although, okay.
remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence,
If he explains
nothing
it
that
more,
could
I'll
link him
probably
back to the
agree that
crime.
Charlie's
In the weeks that
first.
followed, Fredbear's family diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location, and there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving.
Two uneventful years. You mean the only years that no one dies? Like, that's the uneventful year in the FNAF story. It's just the years that just nobody dies. You know, everything's actually okay.
Freddy Fazbear's
That's
Pizza and the new
uneventful
cast of
year.
characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering and even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics, for all those pet projects projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill.
So he's saying that's more so the most important memory. That's why it's his passcode. Because I think, if I remember correctly, in my theory, it's that the 1983 is making it set in that year. But it could just work as his most, what do you call it, memory.
The promise that he had made with his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him. All for him, right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions.
MatPat's never talked about
with just a few sounds.
Nightmare theory, molten, molten MCI, which is that the remnant of missing children are in molten Freddy and Oddworld. This is good. I'm liking this a lot. So he's actually grabbing stuff that he himself has not talked about in other theories before. Because I honestly think he just hasn't talked about it before because it is a lot of speculation. But also, it works, which is probably why he's bringing it up now, because he's gone, oh, okay, it works. So I'm glad he's saying Michael has the nightmares, because due to that encyclopedia, everyone switched sides again. So I'm glad he's bringing up that.
He had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting.
So he's saying Michael has the nightmares.
These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house where he belonged. Was it extreme? Maybe. But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls?
I'm surprised. Has anyone made a remix of this yet? Like an actual remix? I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Well, how's this? I'm keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be unleashed. What it felt.
I've agreed with the recent theories that the TV show is explaining that Clara, which is her name, but Mrs. Afton not wins the case, whatever it is, but takes Michael, and is why Mike calls himself Mike Schmidt instead of Afton in FNAF 1. That's more just like a headcanon theory and not actual, backed up much. But people started saying it after the security breach things happened, where what happens? Where is it patient 46 or Vanessa starts talking about how, her father Billy and the mother separated, and so that's why that stuff started coming up again. But I do agree with it somewhat, but it also doesn't have much evidence. But I think that's a good headcanon explanation for why Mike calls himself Schmidt and not Afton, and why he says the baby's not mine, because she takes him. Which is why in the FNAF 4 house, it's only Crying Child and Elizabeth's room and no Michael room. That's just what I think.
Felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1985. Putting on the golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. You never truly forget your first.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies?
I'll
He couldn't
never
sneak
forget when
out.
people used
Someone would
that to
see him.
say
He
Chica
had
was
to
the
hide
first
them in a
in the
place
whole
where they'd
time.
never be found and where they'd never leave the building. They had to be stuffed inside of the suits. No one maintained those things anyway except for him. And so Susie would go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy, and Gabriel would come next, but it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
Oh,
The
so
body of
he's,
Cassidy was far more bloody.
so he's saying that the Chica cutscenes in Ultimate Custom Night are more so showing him progressing into kidnapping them in a bit more gruesome, it's fucking horrible ways. Okay, that makes sense. Because obviously Chica's meant to be a metaphor or whatever for Afton, so that's been obvious, but the actual reasoning behind it has always been a bit confusing. But this works.
broken than any
I
of
like
the others.
this
He let himself go too far.
I don't have YouTube Premium. I'm gonna watch this though. I watched anime the other day. Jonathan Majors.
Creed 3 in cinemas March 2.
Okay, there's another ad. Okay. So, I should really get premium for next time.
He shouldn't have killed. With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was circumstantial at best, and so he walked away a free man. But Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics. Toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys, these were special. They were a new breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines in local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back, and without him? That was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture. No. As long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they would least suspect him, a lowly day shift security guard. And there it was. Buried in the back of parts and services, mixed in with the old withered animatronics, was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
I remember the days he called that a
We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used
Glad
it.
he's calling
Now
it
none of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, you know, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available.
1987, 5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Dude. Okay, he didn't mention... Where is it? FNAF 2. He talks about FNAF 2. He talks about how he notices them moving. He hasn't talked about Bite of 87 and Michael yet.
Due to the massive success, and even more so
the
unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely...
Yeah, just saying, there's nothing wrong with him skipping over it. It just feels odd to me that he's not mentioned the Bite of 87, which is like the biggest thing.
Capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters, his creations, Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as two special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind, Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
Have an idea? Here's a better one. Sell it on Squarespace.
This is what he adds. Okay, so he's saying all sets the location after FNAF 2, including just building the animatronics. I have some gripes, but we'll see if he explains it.
The day before Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. A scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth's. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free-moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return to where it all started. 1993.
Okay, so he's saying that Baby's eyes actually changing is what led him to realizing, hang on, these robots are coming back. Okay. I agree with that. It's just Circus Baby's Pizza World, it's always been a weird way to put the everything's his location. Just him using that line of due to the massive success, blah blah blah.
Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but William's damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, then another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain contain the remnants of life itself. But
He's
he had to
talking
know for
about
sure.
Multi-MCI.
Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one silvery puddle of goo. Could he transfer this living metal to his own creations? He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted...
The reason why I'm saying thank goodness is because 90% of the FNAF community, like the broader FNAF community, disagree with Molten MCI simply because no one big's really talked about it. So they don't understand it. They don't get where all this has come from. I'm so glad he's talking about this because finally, people will start to actually go, like, understand what Molten MCI is and hopefully agree with it. Because it is one of those things that not no one, but like the small portion of the, the in-depth FNAF theorists, they're the only people who know about Molten MCI. The general FNAF audience, I don't think know about Molten MCI. Even if they've watched videos like mine, I still don't think they probably remember Molten MCI. So I'm glad someone with such a big audience is finally talking about Molten MCI. Very good. That's why I'm so glad.
Wiry endoskeleton, and suddenly the coils came to life. Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it! He had unlocked the secret to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else, something mindless and frantic. Perhaps by mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door, and Afton's mind reeled. The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see all standing against him. But what could they do?
Those minigames can take place over many nights and not just a single night. So I'm glad he said that he comes back for more and then gets spring.
What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into his suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge. The spring lock snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor around him. It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from this tremendous pain. Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations.
He's saying they got sealed.
Nothing is being taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on.
I'm glad he said that, because a lot of people think that because they were sealed, that save them and spring lock, spring trap, all that stuff happens way early in the timeline. But it gets sealed off, William breaks back in to collect the suit, blah, 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 blah. And then he gets spring locked, and I've always thought that Henry was the one who reseals it and makes sure that he does not come back out. So I am glad he said that.
for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will that refused to die. End of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but
yeah, I was going to say,
this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this.
Okay, so it will be 4 parts, I'm assuming, because he said that the story is split up to 3 parts. Beginning of Fredbear's, he talked about last episode. The Afton era, he's not finished yet, so I think it's going to be 4 parts. Probably 5 then. If this is 4 parts, if this is being split up into 2 parts, I think there's a chance that the security breach and all that gets split into another part as well. So this might be a 5-part series. We'll see. But okay, well,
this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and re-established time and time again by the games. That said, there are 2 things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton, speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically, why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close.
He disagrees with this now, but I was gonna say, like, that Fredbear having the mouth, he just said it's Michael's nightmares, so now saying it's his nightmares. But
because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows Circus Babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983.
Okay, I think something that I think is that what he does is he makes the Springlocks, the originals, blah blah blah. He kills Charlie on his own with his own hands. He like he said himself at the beginning of middle, whatever it was, of this, that he got some excitement or joy out of killing Charlie, so then he makes the fun times to do it automated, so it can just happen without him getting his hands in, bloody water, and it can just all be done without tracing back to him immediately. And then after that, Elizabeth dies, so it fails, so then he's like, okay, wait, I can't do automated doesn't work, and then that's why he suddenly goes back to doing it by hand with the missing children, the 2 sets of missing children. That's how I've always seen it, is that he makes it like, he makes the advanced don't work because killing Elizabeth, blah, blah, blah. So then he goes back to doing it just himself. That's what I've thought. That's my reasoning for why, that's why he goes back to that design.
At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work. Hence is why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death
Works
here
if you
is
say
also a
Charlie
bit tricky.
died
We know that he
first.
returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he reemerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next
Wait, what is he talking about?
skeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he...
Wait, I'm confused. What is he saying doesn't work here? I'm sorry, I'm confused. What he's saying doesn't work.
To break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We
them
know that he
all.
melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy
5
Cadet
things
makes that
in
very
one.
clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he's saying that he does break free the Fredbear Golden Freddy suit, but also in that exact same night he gets spring locked. So he can't return back to the basement to do it. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Okay. Sorry, I was just so confused. I was like, what is he saying is wrong? But okay. I think if you can say that all of the story minigames in FNAF 3 happen different nights, I think you can also say that happens the night after. Yeah, but why does he come back? Why does he go back after he's done that? Okay, I'm starting to definitely see what he's talking about now. Because why would William, even if it's the night after he's gotten Golden Freddy, why would he then come back? Maybe he wanted... Why would he come back? Good question, MatPat. Why would he come back to Freddy's after he's gotten what he needed? It's a good question. I would like to propose... Someone said, why not in the chat? I mean, okay. But I would like to propose that back in FNAF 3, when we didn't have any future games, he came back anyway. Like, I don't know if maybe that was something he's... Well, okay. Molten MCI in the first place has been included into these minigames, etc. Like, it wasn't a retcon because he's not retconned anything, he's just added to it. Like he said he does, he doesn't retcon, he adds. So he added meaning to this minigame, more meaning to this minigame being Molten MCI. But maybe... It's a good question. Why does he go back? Why does he go back? Because at that point, all 5 are destroyed. Spirits are out. I don't know, maybe he wanted to get Spring Bonnie. Because he's in the safe room. So maybe he wanted to get Spring Bonnie, clean up evidence. Maybe he just didn't want anyone noticing that he was there. He wanted to clean up evidence. Maybe he wanted to take Spring Bonnie because he would kill... If he didn't get spring trapped, he would have killed more. So maybe he thought, you know what, if they try to open another Freddy's, I know where the spring lock suit is because it will be at home with me. That's just what I'm thinking now. Just a quick reason I can think of. Yeah, I don't know, I'm agreeing with myself, but that would make a little sense, actually. He comes back to grab the spring lock suit because he plans to kill again, just in case they open another Freddy's. because there is the chance that if they open another Freddys, that this Springlock and all the originals, blah blah blah, are no longer there. So maybe he just wants to bring it back with him, and then he can't because the souls, he gets trapped, he can't kill again for 30 years. That's a quick reasoning I can give. Just a quick one. I could think about it more.
But then finishes 30 years later when he reemerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile.
Him coming back and then doing it after 30 years, I don't think that would be the first thing on his mind when he comes back to life. I don't think he's immediately thinking, oh shit, I've got to finish that job I didn't finish. But okay, yeah, it makes sense. No, it doesn't. Sorry. My reasoning might make sense, but it's not backed up by evidence. But neither is any other reasoning for that. But either way, all 5 are in Molten Freddy, blah, blah, blah. It's outright confirmed. I was going to say there's a chance that Golden Freddy isn't in it, and that's why Cassidy, as its own like thing, is so vengeful and so different because it got left behind. But Candy Cadet straight up says 5 become 1, which is insinuating that Golden Freddy also became 1. Food for thought.
Or he's had himself some reason makes the most sense to cover, and another 40 plus years of films to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history to recap. Ooh, when you put it that way, something tells me that this might balloon into 4 parts. Ugh, we'll see. Anyway, until then, my Faz heads, congratulations, you made it through a massive upload. And hey, if you are still looking for more to watch, then check out the other 5 brand new awesome theories over on our...
Yeah, okay. You're just going to talk about South Fury. Okay. Overall, I really like this theory. This was honestly one of his best theories. I feel like saying it in a long time feels rude, but as in most accurate FNAF theory. This one I loved, but it was definitely assumptions and what's the word? Headcanon, you know. There was some evidence, but also, you know, it was more of just his headcanon. I still love the video, don't get me wrong, but it was more headcanon. But this is definitely the most accurate in a while. I'm so glad he's talked about Molten MCI. Finally, people who don't obsessively watch FNAF theories are gonna actually finally know about Molten MCI. I'm very glad about that. Because I don't even think... Did I talk about that in my, like, hour and a half one? I don't think so. But yeah, and then this one was about Henry. I also like that. That was good. These were... I feel like all of the post-security breach ones, not just game theory, but other theorists as well, it's all just really... this kid is now, or this adult, or this character is just robot this character. I don't think I'm a big fan of those theories, mostly just because everyone's trying to say everyone is a robot. Either, you know, Charlie's a robot, Gregory's a robot, Elizabeth's now Vanessa, Michael's now back, Henry's baby back. I just think all those theories are kind of, you know, they're not... Who knows, they could be right, but I don't think that's a good direction for the series, because you undermined FNAF 6's ending once, FNAF, with everything else. But, you know, that's fine. But making literally everyone come back, because there is a chance that the missing children are now in the blob or something, so there's literally a chance that everyone's back. That would be very bad in my opinion, which is why I always am very quick to disagree with, you know, everyone being a robot, all those theories, just because it doesn't really, like, the evidence for them are always questionable, and it just really, really further undermines FNAF 6's ending and the big speech in the big final. It just... that's why I don't like them. But yeah, I love this video. I love this video. Editing's amazing. I really wish I could edit like this, because this is great editing. I really do appreciate and love the narrative sort of version of this, and the way it's more story driven, like my hour and a half one. But this is actually accurate, and it's actually more about, you know, more evidence-based. So I'm loving this series so far. Love this video. No, even though I disagree with, what was it? Circus Babies and Sister Location and all that. That placement. Even though I disagree with it, no hate. Like, that's one thing that FNAF theorists recently have been doing. Well, not even just theorists, just the general community. Immediately hating MatPat, immediately hating FNAF, immediately hating even me a bit. Just because it's a theory and they disagree with it. That's not enough reason to hate someone, hate their theory, or anything like that. Just disagree. Like I said in the comment of my last live stream, I think it was last live stream, or it was a video, where I said, if you're going to hate someone's theory, at least just bare minimum, watch it, because some people didn't even watch it. They saw game theory FNAF and they went, oh god, here we go. Really? And then not only watch it, but just say, you know, liked the video, loved the video, you know, appreciate the time and effort that went into this video, but I disagree with this part, or, you know, I disagree in general because of this, because of that, blah, blah, blah. Try and have a conversation, you know, if you disagree with my theories even, have a conversation with me. Give me reasons why you disagree. Don't just go, you shit. Like, that's really just, it's not great. I've been seeing it a lot recently. For some reason, it's just all been disrespectful and a lot of hate to a lot of theorists, just because, you know, theory is wrong. Just still, at least just say, you know, you don't even have to say you love the video. Just say, I disagree because of this, and leave it at that. Don't say, the theory is shit because of this. Just, it's so easy not to be a dickhead. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Loved this video. I'll be watching the next few parts as well, live as well. If he makes it 4 or 5 parts, hopefully episode 2 of the Fazbear Frights timeline is ready and out by that time. Maybe, don't quote me on that. Episode 2 may be a little bit later in the next month. I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to get them done as quick as possible. But yeah, that's just a thing. That's just a live stream for you. See you in the premiere, which is in 7 minutes. I'm pretty sure, 99% sure, my dog's barking. But if I end this stream, it's gonna take you straight to the premiere page. Let's hope so. Bye, guys. And end.